Finally. Finally. Hello, everyone. It is Owen here. Sorry, it took a while to get in. YouTube wasn't letting me get on, but now I'm on. So hopefully it will work. Just 1 second. I just want to make a little change here. Um, yeah. So tonight is basically going to be a rant. I wanted St. Patrick's Day is coming up, and I want to talk about. Thanks, Wayne. Good to know. Good to know. It just faced a lot. YouTube wouldn't let me on. It took me 3 attempts to get on. Um, these things are strange. So, as I was saying, hi Miho, hi clans and dynasties. Hi Miho, hi clans and dynasties. Sorry, just setting up something else here. So, what I want to talk about today is, as St. Patrick's Day is coming up, there is a myth, an urban legend rather, that I find extremely annoying. That hi Dennis, thank you. An urban legend that Saint Patrick um, killed or led a massacre, an apocalypse of pagans, especially of druids. Um, it is something that appears a lot, and it's appearing a lot more. Um, Sort of, I see it on YouTube. I see some very fancy videos about it regularly, and basically, it's really irritating me. It's one of several urban legends that seem to be getting more and more powerful, unfortunately. These videos come out with AI, fancy AI, stuff like that, and they get thousands and thousands of views, whereas they're promoting just rubbish. Anyway, let's start. I have a PowerPoint to show some ideas. And I'll do that, and then at the end, or if in the middle, if anyone wants to ask a question, just shout. Maybe at the end, if you have time, we can have a question and answers. Good to know, Wayne, that you survived the storm. Down here where I live in Valencia and South Care, we know all about storms. We've been through a few, but this weekend it looks like finally spring has arrived. I did 2 walks this weekend. Yesterday we got completely soaked, but today it was lovely. It was in Ballinskelligs and the beach was full. So maybe summertime we might even have a nice summer. Anyway, let me share the screen so I can put up the PowerPoint. So here it goes, I hope. Hold on, is this working or not? Okay, there it is. So, hold on, I'm going to make it a bit bigger so I can. So, just 1 second. Yeah. So, Pagan Apocalypse, as I say. Or, hold on. Sorry, just getting used to this. Slide 2. Come on. Basically, no, the snake myth does not represent St. Patrick massacring Irish Druids. As you can see, I've picked up a very naff AI image, which I think well represents this urban legend. It's a very, very modern urban legend, as we'll see. No, hold on. Sorry. Or I could put the title of the thing in a more posh and more academic way to annoy people. St. Patrick, neo-paganism, colonialist mentality, and cultural appropriation. Or a rant. I prefer to call it a rant. It's a rant about history, a discussion about history, about the need for some sort of correctness, some sort of reality in history. Okay, so as I was saying, Coming up to St. Patrick's Day, you often see this thing that St. Patrick is a bad guy. This video is a reaction to that. Every time, all St. Patrick's Day, there's a deluge of videos and internet posts about him, where he's portrayed as a monster, a perpetrator of a massacre of druids, of pagans. And you can ask, why are snakes? Why do snakes represent druids, represent pagans? And the answer is from these people, because druids, as everybody knows, had tattoos of snakes. Now, I grew up in school, received quite a nationalist education from the Christian Brothers, amongst others, and I never learned that, probably because I went to the wrong school. But I'll come back to that. Now, all of these videos, St. Patrick the bad guy videos, they usually have lots of AI, lots of fancy images, AI images, bland Irish music, what I would call plastic paddy music, and they draw on a mishmash of historical periods. You know, they have pictures of standing stones, but the standing stones have lots of spirals on them, which is drawing at, like, if you go looking for spirals, you can find them in Newgrange and in the Neolithic passage tombs. In Iron Age and Bronze Age, standing stones and stone circles and stone rows, you won't find them. They're different areas in Irish history. They're mixing them up. And also, badly pronounced Irish words. Thanks, Joshua. Thanks for the lovely comment. Giagich. Joshua. Great to hear stuff like that. So, like, pronouncing Irish words like Samhain, which is pronounced in all sorts of ways that I can't say, because, you know, the name Samhain is stuck in me. Or instead of saying Bealtana, they would use the English version, Belting, which means nothing. And they have this idealistic pre-Christian Ireland. It's a golden age, an age when everyone was happy. There was big villages and then all these druids and stuff like that. And they have no understanding of either the Irish language or Irish history. The only sources they draw on are secondary English ones. Sort of, it's horrendous, to say the least. It gets me very, very angry reading stuff like that. It's a complete bad picture of Irish history, and it strikes me as colonialist, because it's people who insist that Irish history is like that. They insist again, like, if you try and show them, no, it wasn't like that, you know, they will fight you, and they'll get very, very annoyed. So let me move on to the next one. So this picture, this idea of is complete nonsense. The snake tattoos, the idea that druids had snake tattoos, it probably seems to date to a book I read years ago, Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, which dates from 1983. It's a retelling of the Arthurian stories. I read it, I liked it. There was a mini series about it years back, which is quite good. In that book, the druids have snake tattoos. And that seems to be the source of the idea that druids have snake tattoos. Somehow or other, something written into a book for purposes of writing a novel has seeped into neo-pagan ideas and seeped into the common sense. But when you turn to actual history, it makes no sense. Why would a druid or a pre-Christian priest have a snake tattoo in Ireland? There were no bloody snakes. And actually, I don't think there's any record of any of the bog bodies they found of any of them having tattoos. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that they didn't have tattoos. So the majority of these works, the majority of these videos, and sometimes books, sometimes web pages, Facebook posts that claim to portray a pre-Christian Ireland are based on this very simplistic picture and only English language sources. The Irish language sources are complicated. There are some. There's a lot of stuff written in the medieval period which have been translated. A lot of the translations are very problematic. People use them to draw up a picture of Iron Age, of pre-Christian Ireland. It's difficult, especially since the translations are problematic and they're taken out of context. And another problem with these sources is that, I'm jumping ahead a bit here, all written Irish sources are written after Ireland became Christian. So they've passed through a filter of Christianization of the Bible. St. Patrick says lots of stuff about pagans, about honey, refusing to drink, about milk. And you can see most of this is actually not a representation of an actual event, but is his rephrasing of something from the Bible. There is a blog called Vox Hibernicarum, written by an interesting archaeologist who knows his stuff, who's read St. Patrick's work, knows that era more than anyone else. He doesn't say what his name is, but I think you can find if you look on Twitter or Blue Sky. And his stuff is very, very good. He points out how you have to read St. Patrick in his context, which is a biblical context. Another context is like the Latin language. So the whole idea of Druid enters into the Irish language through Latin. So there's no evidence of Druids as such existing in Ireland. More than likely, there was some sort of priesthood. But when they start writing histories, when they start writing about Druids, they adopt a category that Caesar used, that other Roman writers use, and they use the same category. So there's a whole pile of baggage adapted to it. Probably Ireland there must have been priests in Ireland, but were they the same sort of Druid that you find in Gaul? We don't know. Maybe in some ways, maybe no. There definitely doesn't seem to have been like a holy isle, or one central place for the training of Druids. The account is of Tacitus, of the Roman attacking the island where Holyhead is, in Wales, where it was the center of British Druids. There doesn't seem to have been an Irish version of that. Okay, returning to this version of history, they make Iron Age Ireland, which Iron Age is, instead of saying Celtic Ireland or Gaelic Ireland, it's basically the same thing, Iron Age Ireland, more or less from, say, 800 BC to, say, 400 AD. They make this seem a wonderful place. To me, the comparison is with Tolkien's Shire, looking the exact same. Okay? Now, neo-paganism, like all religions, is syncretic. It draws on many, many different sources, like Wicca. It draws on Gaelic beliefs, what you can call Celtic beliefs. So Gaelic beliefs of people, pre-Roman people from Scotland, from Wales, etc. It draws on some Saxon beliefs, etc., and puts them all together. However, too often, this is done in what we can call a colonialist way. It involves cultural appropriation. You're taking ideas and using them out of context. Yeah, who wrote that? Chronocrower. Yeah, it is the product of Romanticism. I'll get to that. Not history, except to make a deviation. Romanticism, European Romanticism from the late 19th century, has had a huge impact on history, not just Irish history, and German history, and English history, British history, French history. You have Romanticism developing at the end of the 18th century, which is influenced by Gaelic ideas taken from Scotland. Macpherson, his book, it's Usheen, but spelt wrongly. I don't know how they pronounce it. That influences the German writers like Herder, etc. It influences Napoleon. Soon afterwards, modern nationalism develops, and history, until now, academic history and popular history is very much based on states, on nations. The idea developed from Romanticism that every nation needed a state, Beforehand, that didn't exist. So in the early 19th century, many myths were created, and they have become part of history. Like in British history, you had the Whig concept of history, which was that British history was always evolving in this linear pattern for democracy and tolerance getting better and better from the Glorious Revolution in 1689 onwards, except that ignores what happened in Ireland, what the English did in Ireland, which was the complete opposite. That it ignores the fact that the Irish were asking for religious toleration much before. They were asking for liberties much before. The liberties that the Whig history sees conquered in Ireland, in England, were eliminated in Ireland at more or less the same time. So Romanticism and history are very much tied together. Now, jumping back to this bad history of bad neo-pagan history, should we say, many Irish pagans realize this. You can go and look, you'll find people saying, no, okay, we're not over fond of St. Patrick, but this thing of the apocalypse of snakes is rubbish. It's wrong. Okay, now, so essentially, it has to be acknowledged, history is something complicated. It's contradictory. It's complex. It's messed up. Parts are missing. We never have the whole picture. We have partial pictures. Even if you're trying to write modern history, say about the troubles in Northern Ireland, say about the Vietnam War, say about Nixon, say about 9/11, you're never going to have the full picture. There's always things missing. And especially with ancient history, with old history, you'll never have the whole story. You'll have suppositions. You can make suppositions based on the evidence you have. You can put stuff together. In some things, for example, looking at Neolithic passage grave culture in Ireland, they have a very, very good idea about what happened in terms of religious beliefs, but they don't have the whole story. In terms of Iron Age Ireland, pre-Christian Ireland, there is an absence of strong evidence. So people presenting this story of this was Irish paganism, they're wrong. We don't know. We have an idea of stuff. We have some Christian sources which kind of give you an idea that these people could have been gods, these could have been deities, but they have come to us through various filters. It's very hard to take away the filters and get back at what the people believe because nothing is written down. And there's very little material culture. For Bronze Age Ireland and for Neolithic Ireland, there's much more than there is Iron Age, which is strange, but it's a fact. Now, in this idealistic, this history or mythology of Ireland, it often throws all of pre-Christian Ireland together. But we need to differentiate the different cultures of pre-Christian Ireland. You had the hunter-gatherers who came, first of all. Then they got replaced by others. Then there was emergence of the Neolithic passage tomb culture. Later, the Bronze Age arrived. We had the Bell Beaker people. And later we had the Iron Age. We don't know the full history of this. We know these different cultures exist because we have evidence. How one became the other, how they were replaced, we can make suppositions, but we will never know the full stories. They're all different cultures and their dates are still argued with. Yesterday in The Guardian, there was an interesting article about when did the Irish language come to Ireland? And different academics were quoted, and some people were saying as far ago as 1000 BC. Others were arguing that it only came with refugees running away from Britain after the Romans invaded. I personally think the second part is wrong. So did Irish come in 1000 BC? Did it come in 100 AD? My feeling is somewhere between, but maybe like 500, 600 with the so-called Celtics, when Ireland became Celtic, the Celtic language arrived. But we don't know and we can make suppositions, but that's why the academics will argue. They're never going to know for sure. And if anyone says with certainty, no, the Irish language came to Ireland in 999 BC, they need to study history a bit better, and they need to acknowledge their ignorance. We cannot know everything, and in fact, for many things we know very little. So, history is not linear. It's not going like constantly a series of development. It goes in waves. There's no pagan golden age immediately before Christianization. Rather, there's something kind of the opposite. The Bronze Age was, in many, you could say it was a time of a boom time. For example, Kerry was exporting, or Kerry didn't exist, but a large amount of copper was being exported from Kerry at this time, from a big coal mine in Ross Island and elsewhere in South Kerry. There was a lot of bronze being produced, and they have found some of that in England and perhaps in the continent, but not sure about that. So somewhere like South Kerry was part of an international trade network. They never would have said that at the time, of course, but there was a big movement around. Around 800 BC, there appears to have been some sort of environmental catastrophe. I think the weather got colder, which affected crops, affected plants, probably trees. And then shortly after that, again, the date is debated, but the Iron Age begins. So the Celtic people, the people speaking a Celtic language, probably arrived, but probably because of this environmental disaster, the population was declined. Less crops were planted. Trees expanded. They know this from pollen samples they've picked. So Ireland went through some sort of complicated period. Also, we may know about aspects of belief in the Bronze Age we may know more about aspects of Bronze Age Ireland than we do about Iron Age Ireland. Clans and Dynasties has just asked a very interesting question, saying our ancient 5 provincial kingdoms most likely date from the Bronze Age. I'm not sure if they date from the Bronze Age as such, but as I come to the end of this, I touch on this. The idea of the Gaelic people, they use the past, they use previous structures, previous kingdoms, previous important sites, such as Tara, Rathcrowan, Cashel. They were really important in the legitimation of kings. So, but the one fact I might disagree here is that they could actually be older than Bronze Age. Like Tara, what is it? The Mound of the Hostages. That's a passage grave. And I'm fairly sure that starts in the Neolithic. So Tara was an important site, starting in the Neolithic, and it expands. It was important. Probably in the Bronze Age, we have the emergence of Rathcrowan, which is Connacht, Owenmaka, Ulster, Tara, Leinster. There's another place in South Leinster, which I can't remember off the top of my head, and Cashel and Munster. Sort of the kingly sites, the capitals of of the provinces. The importance of these sites remained important until the Normans arrived, and in some even later. Like Cashel is still an important site. It is no longer a religious site due to the outcome of the Reformation, but so it remained really important for a long time. So, and as I'll say later, certain aspects of Irish paganism remained, and that is one of the most important, and it's also one of the most overlooked. I'll come back to that in a bit, but thanks for that question. Now, where am I? Yeah, I'm struggling with the PowerPoint because PowerPoint and YouTube Live don't mix too well. There are various programs which I tried out yesterday, but they just made a complete mess of my computer. So I'm doing it by hand, as we say. Okay. So again, since we're talking about Romanticism and history, briefly looking at the history of neo-paganism, as I said before, it is syncretic. It's drawing on different cultures, different ideas. However, unless this is done very carefully, there's a danger of what I would call a pick and mix result. So that you end up with a religion that is, what does it mean? I know that probably all religions, all big religions, are a mix of this. They take things from other religions nonstop. But the way some people do it with neo-paganism, it creates this colonialist mindset, sort of, here am I in Ireland, I have some knowledge of Ireland, of the Irish language, I have a good knowledge of Irish history, and people are telling me things that are wrong. They're reinventing my history. I find that, I won't say offensive, I find it very annoying. I find it colonialist. Much neo-paganism was actually Victorian or 20th century in origin. Ronald Hutton is a very good he's a professor of religion in I can't remember which English university. He has loads of work on this. He has a brilliant book, Pagan Britain, which deals also with Ireland. And if you look on YouTube, he has a series of lectures about the history of paganism from Neolithic time, if not earlier in Britain, until the modern. So he shows how many pagan beliefs, like in Britain, they have this idea of the green man. The green man is not pagan. He's medieval. Shee and the gigs are also medieval. So many things that people believe are pagan, dating back from before Christianity, do not date that far. Many only date back as far as the early 19th century. For example, the idea of a veil between worlds at Halloween. Like, you know, the way that, so the other world and this world are very close, so ghosts can come in. Some people say that's a Celtic belief. It's not a Celtic or Gaelic belief. It was invented by Victorian mystics. The same with the idea of Bridget as a goddess, at least in Ireland. Bridget as a goddess, the idea only became popular in the early 20th century. One of the first people to really be interested in this idea was Maud Gonne, the muse of Yeats. Yeats himself was big into these mystical ideas. Another idea was the idea of the great goddess. Ronald Hutton discusses this very well. So in basically the first half of the 20th century, perhaps going to mid 60s, there was this idea that before all the modern religions, there was a religion, one European religion based on a great goddess. There was a female goddess. And that was accepted for quite a while. And then archaeologists and people began to discover that, no, there's problems with this idea. It's now largely been rejected. But many people still have this idea. Pete, you left a comment, the sons of Mill, Mill Espana, the Milesians. I'll mention them briefly in a while, I hope. But that's a whole different conversation. I actually had that on the walk today because the walk I did today was in Ballinaskelligs, and Ballinaskelligs Bay is where the sons of Mill Espana are believed to have landed in Ireland. In Irish, the Irish for Ballinaskelligs Bay is Inverscana. Well, there's a there's a bit of a conflict. I believe it's Ballinaskelligs Bay, so do many people. But in the past, if you look at a map of Kerry, where Kenmare is, Kenmare Bay, which is to the south of Ivra, they call that Inverscana, saying that she landed there. But if you actually go to Ballinaskelligs Bay, there are various sites. Ictacour, just past Waterville, it's standing stones. That's where Skane is supposed to be buried. At the other side of the bay, there's another standing row where another son of Mill is buried. In front of Waterville, which is right in the middle of the bay, is Carrigana. Again, it's supposed to be the death place of another. Lots of sons of Mill died. On Skellig Michael, in the middle of the so-called monk's graveyard, there's a stone, people say that's marking another site. And then there's a megalithic tomb in Waterville, which is another one. So all the Gaelic people, they identified all these Neolithic sites, megalithic sites around Ballinascalig's Bay, and said that's where the sons are buried, the sons of Mill and Skena, their leader, Amergan's wife. So all these areas are identified. So it makes sense to me that Ballinascalig's Bay is where they landed. So it's central to Gaelic mythology. Okay, sorry, just let me have a sip. My voice is getting a bit ragged. Now, early Christian Ireland. Oh, have a look at that picture there. This is Kilreelig. It's on the corner of Ballinascalig's Bay, but it's looking straight out to the ocean. If you actually would look slightly left, if I tilted the camera leftwards, there is an island there, and it's it's Bull off Dursey Island, off the Beara Peninsula. In Irish, it's Tech-Dun, the House of Dun, believed to be where a Gaelic god of the dead lived. And then it became a place for the souls of purgatory. But it is I believe, one of the remnants of Gaelic pagan beliefs that we still have. So let's have a look at early Christian Ireland. Sort of, while the Iron Age, the pagan Iron Age, was a time of possible population decline, not a particularly idyllic time. Early Christian Ireland seems to have been a time of population and economic expansion. There are at least 40,000 ring forts around Ireland. They were the basic. Ring fort is a bad name. It's basically a homestead. They had walls built out of stone, the castle. More commonly, it would be built out of mud. And they're built in networks. So if you find a ring fort, you're very likely to look around and find others, at least in the west of Ireland where there's been less development. Like along the east coast, you have Dunleary, Dundalk, anywhere beginning with Dungannon. These are all big towns or middle of cities. There's no way you're going to find the ring forts there. So the ring forts were the homesteads of the people for the first few centuries under Christianity, and they expanded. At the same time, there's also a huge number of religious sites. Where I live, Valencia Island, there are 3 or 4 that we still have old monastic sites. And then on some of the little islands nearby, there's more. And of course, there's a Skelligs. So there was a wave of people adopting a religious life. It could be that these were people who previously had been druids or whatever the form of priesthood was. But it does seem that the idea of becoming religious, following religious life, was very popular in Ireland in the first few centuries, early Christian Ireland. And people, they were moving away. They weren't going to become a monk in a big, fancy monastery. Well, some may have eventually, but these people were coming to the very edge of Ireland, to small little places. Like this picture here, it's literally almost on a cliff. It's a great view, but good Lord, in winter they would have frozen. There was probably 5 or 6 monks living in these. Some of them had women. It would have been a very hard form of life. Yet they survived and for a while thrived. This picture here, this is Ilon Lochon, which is between Valencia on the left and Portmagee on the right. And it's been, excavated and renovated very well. This shrine, that's called a book shrine or a gable shrine or a tent shrine. There's very few of them in Ireland, but there are 3 in the South Kerry region. There would have been bones in here, the bones of the founder of the site. And this was a shrine built to him. And if you notice, there's lots of white stones, white quartz. This is something that I know in Newgrange is controversial, but in Newgrange, the front is covered in big white quartz stones. You'll find it in other Neolithic sites. You'll find it in some of the megalithic ones. Um, White quartz is associated with religious sites in Ireland for a long, long time. And I know if you go many modern cemeteries, you go in, you'll see a grave is covered in little white stones. It's funny. I don't think anyone's ever studied that, but it's something very interesting. And if you're ever down around South Kerry, I would strongly recommend visiting Ilonlochon. If you can't get out to Skellig Michael, it's a won't say it's better than Skellig Michael. It's different. Skellig Michael, you go in a large group of people. There are tour guides. You don't have much freedom. Whereas this is a tiny little island, and you have to go there to experience it. Okay. Now, Rome and Ireland. Ireland was the first large area outside of the Roman Empire to become Christianized, at least in terms of of Western Europe, the Western Empire. Um, and it becoming Christianized, it becoming part of the Roman Church, involved a large amount of adaptation. It was outside Rome, but it has to be understood it was not isolated from Rome. Ireland wasn't invaded by Rome, but there was a lot of contact. Trade, weapons, military, the exchange of ideas, and of course, raiding. Everyone knows the story of how St. Patrick was brought to Ireland. He was captured in a raid. Um, and then towards the end of Roman Britain, Irish, like you have people who would become Dalriada on both sides of the North Channel in Scotland. Then you have other Irish settled for a while in Wales. There's a lot of evidence of them. I'm not. In the end, those settlements seem to have been incorporated by others, but there was a lot of movement. And again, there would have been trade non-stop. And then all the Irish sources we have, we have a huge corpus of Gaelic literature, some written in Latin, some in Irish. But all of these, it has to be understood, have a Christian and Roman/classical filter, sort of, which makes it very hard to understand them. So if you're reading St. Patrick's Confessio, in a way, you need to be reading the Bible at the same time. You would kind of have to take St. Patrick discusses, for example, when he's fleeing Ireland, he said the boat that was going to bring him out, he had some trouble because he wouldn't kiss their nipples. But if you actually look at it, that is not talking about an Irish pagan practice. It's literally taken out of the Bible. So these filters are very important, and fortunately or unfortunately, Ireland, Western Europe is a secular society now. We go back 400 years ago to the Renaissance, Reformation period. The educated people would all know their Bible. They would understand these things. Go back to 400 or 500. Educated Christians would know these things, so they were important. But it means that if I picked up St. Patrick's Confessio now and read it, I would miss all his references to the Bible because I simply wouldn't have good enough biblical knowledge. Okay, now let's move on. Now, St. Patrick. St. Patrick, we also run into another problem of difficult myths. The banishing of snakes. This dates from the 12th century, probably from the work of Geraldus Cambrensis, the very famous Gerald of Wales, the very famous Norman propagandist who came to Ireland a while after the Norman invasion and basically wrote a book justifying the Norman invasion, portraying the Irish as as savages, as essentially pagan, saying that they're not worthy to be inside Christianity and they need to be reformed. His work was so strong in that sort of sense that the Elizabethans picked it up again. They use it a lot in the various struggles in Ireland in the second half of the 16th century. He's not a good source. He's not a good historian. So he got the idea of maybe it. Some people said something about St. Patrick and snakes, but he's the first one who really makes it popular. So I just find that hilarious when people talk about, oh, the snakes getting driven out of Ireland is a metaphor for something else. It's not. The idea of snakes getting driven out of Ireland dates from the 12th century. Now, there are other stories about St. Patrick. I don't have time to go into them all. They start appearing 2 centuries or more after St. Patrick's death. There was a struggle between Armagh and Kildare for primacy in the church. Armagh claimed to represent St. Patrick. Kildare was representing St. Bridget. Armagh would ultimately win. So until now, the most important seat of the Irish Catholic and indeed the Protestant Church of Ireland is Armagh. And there was a propaganda war. There were various books written about St. Patrick and, as far as I know, about St. Bridget, each pushing their own. There was a Bishop Tyracon who wrote a lot about the life of St. Patrick, and he probably invents a lot of stuff, but I think the Shamrock, etc., dates from him. Now, something you'll find over the next few days, you'll see St. Patrick's true name. And then if you read it, they'll say his name was Maewyn Succat. This is based on a misreading of Tyracon. It dates from the 19th century in a book by an American librarian called Edna Barth. I just find it hilarious that some little old lady writing somewhere in the middle of the United States, a short little book about Irish legends and stuff, managed to create this, I don't know if you'd call it a meme, but this myth about the name of St. Patrick. I just find it hilarious. Okay, St. Patrick himself, there are 2 writings, and they are the earliest writings in Irish history from Ireland. So they are very important historically. They're his confession, his confessio, and the letter to Coroticus, who appears to have been some sort of lord or chieftain in Roman Britain or perhaps Scotland. They're the earliest historical sources about Ireland, but they are not easy to deal with. You need a very, very good knowledge of biblical, of a good knowledge of the Bible to understand them. However, they give evidence of the difficulty he was facing in creating a church in Ireland. And contrary to a pagan apocalypse, it can often appears that he's trying not to clash with the practices with previous beliefs, with pagan practices. There's no real mention of Druids in them. Now, how successful was St. Patrick? He was St. Patrick. He was successful. He was St. Patrick, of course. He was successful in Christianizing Ireland. But this Christianization took longer than is normally assumed. It's kind of assumed he went to Ireland around 432, and then within a few years Ireland was Christian. No, it was probably within 2 centuries that Ireland became completely Christian, and some beliefs would have lingered on. So Christianization in itself, it was probably organic in that Ireland became Christian. I believe it was peaceful, it was true absorption. I also think there wasn't a pagan church as such to oppose him. Rather, there were a series of decentralized beliefs, practices, and gods and deities. I think it's important because some people think, oh, the Druids all the Druids came together to fight him. No. St. Patrick started off probably as someone almost non-important and slowly gaining traction, and then his ideas spreading. And the fact that it was spreading the idea of one religion as opposed to very localized things helped it spread more. Because if you look at Gaelic Ireland, if you look at Gaelic history, everything is decentralized, apart from culture. Gaelic Ireland was a centralized, a unified culture, but politically, socially, it was extremely decentralized. Things were very broken down locally, and with beliefs and practices would have been like that. The law, you had what would become called Breton law. I prefer saying the the early Irish law, but that was practiced on a very local level. Um, Wayne, good question. Wouldn't Christianity have been accepted from the top down when leaders accepted it? Yeah, but I have a feeling that they would start on the ground. They would start getting a lot of, like, say, servants, a local lord, and then some of the more important ones. There are legends about, for example, Owen MacNeil, Owen the son of Niall and Hostages, getting baptized by St. Patrick. It probably happened in certain occasions more towards the end of his life. And it could have happened that some lords, maybe even a king, got baptized by St. Patrick, but they probably didn't. They may not even have changed any of their practices. I would say that you had people who were Christian and pagan at the same time. Um, Also, people would have been baptized. They could get a Christian identity. What was the opposite identity? We say pagan, but pagan is a bad word. It's invented. It's a Roman slur as such. What was the opposite to pagan in Ireland in the 5th century? Um, Probably there was not a single word. It was, I believe in this God, this Spirit. Okay, I can get baptized by God. I believe in God the Father, the Son Almighty, but I still believe that this well is there's some sort of spirit there. Eventually, that spirit will become Saint such and such. So people would accept the two religions at the same time. There weren't that many clashes. I think Saint Patrick was quite good that way. He didn't attack the existing beliefs. They would undermine it from below at first, and then yes, leaders would increasingly accept it, and the church then became very, very established. What about remnants? So Ireland becomes Christianized, and then what happens to the pre-Christian past? Um, the first picture here, these are the Ictor stones. So these are Bronze Age, if not before. They have been excavated, so we know a lot about them. But they were used until very late, so that the Gaelic Irish were using these stones for something even after becoming Christian. But they said this is the burial place of Scena, the wife of Emergan. Um, so it was a pagan thing that got accepted and got used and reused. Now the other picture here, this is a cairn on near Drung Hill, which is between Glen Bay and Carsavine. This is probably or possibly the inauguration site of the last McCarthy Moor. But you'll find cairns like this on many mountains in Ireland, many sacred mountains. I think that's something very important. Like Croagh Patrick is very sacred to Catholics. People will walk up it in their bare feet. But you'll find a series of mountains. Near Carsavine in Kerry, where I live, there is Connacht Again, it's a sacred mountain. But not all of them have been Christianized. Just outside Killarney, you have Paps Anu, the breasts of Anu, two breast-like mountains, and there's cairns on top of them. They are places that have been connected with sacredness, with religious worship throughout the Christian period, but also before. And I'd say the same would go for Springs. But now, this is returning to the question Michal from Clans and Dynasties asked: the use of the past to legitimate the Gaelic present. This is Tara. So one of the most important impacts, one of the most important impacts of the pre-Christian past was the continued use of ancient royal sites. These were used to legitimate Gaelic dynasties. whether Tara, Cashel, Rackrow, and our market, etc. And probably, like if Dunengasa is ancient, Grinon Alig in Donegal, which was one of sort of the supposed center of the Canaloan. I think that is goes. It's a ring fort, but goes well back in history, much before. Dunengasa goes back to the Bronze Age. So you'll find these old places that were important, whether politically, whether in a sacred sense, or more than likely both, they continued to be in the early Christian period. Now, I think, yeah, I've reached the end. So, any questions? Any questions? I hope you enjoyed that. I'm running a bit hoarse. So, I'm not sure how many people are 18 people watching. Oh, that's quite good. So, any questions? So I'm just going to hold on. I'm trying to move on to the last. Well, thank you, Wayne. Glad you enjoyed it. So, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for watching. So I'll start to finish up. So Guramahaguv, thank you for everyone for watching. I hope I've made you think about history, and especially the need to accept that we'll never know everything. Thank you, Wicked Felina. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoyed it again. I hope I've also shown you some of the beautiful places around Kerry. And if you could subscribe to my channel, and anyone who Wayne has already made a contribution, thank you, Wayne. Oh, no need to make any contributions, but they're all welcome. Now, I plan to do more lives. I'm doing more lives every so often. Once a week, I'm going to a site and doing a live from them. I'm hoping to do a talk like this and a question and answers once a month. Thank you, Dennis. Glad you enjoyed it. So if you have any ideas of anything you'd like me to talk about, send it in. I was going to talk about something else today, but I saw a video during the week about the whole thing of St. Patrick, and it really, really irritated me. So I got inspired. I don't know whether that was good or bad, but I did. And then I'm hoping that eventually we can have a question and answer session. If you wanted to ask questions, anything about Irish history, it would be good. To Hallow Newmarket, I'll get there. I'll get there eventually, Wayne. I promise you. Except I'm in Kerry, and that's in Cork, but we will. We will. Yes, Mihal, that would be great. It'd be great to do a live shared session. Just I have to put more water. My throat is going. You go on for 2 or 3 hours. For me, an hour, and I need another drink. So thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I think I will say goodbye. Just figure out how to turn it off. The Truth About St. Bridget, the Origins of Goddess Bridget. That's a good one, except I might annoy too many people, but I should have done that actually, Felina, on the 1st of February. But let's see. I'll return to that. Thank you very much, Crana Crower. Thank you. Thanks for the comment. So thanks for all the comments. They're great. They're great to read. So it's good to see them when you're talking, that you're giving a talk like this. You feel like you're talking to yourself. But it's good to know. Too many lies about St. Bridget. Yeah, too much confusion. And my feeling is, while there may have been a goddess, I think the goddess would have been more in Europe. The information, like the saint definitely existed. But since the beginning of the 20th century, this idea, I think especially since the beginning of this century, people have been pushing the idea of a goddess Bridget, which is the goddess is overpushed and the poor old saint is underestimated. And I think that the amount of evidence we have about Saint Bridget as a person existing is huge. And she was, in terms of, as far as I know, um, saints from the early Christian period, quite radical in that, like, she dealt with women. Um, she, I think she even helped one of her followers have an abortion. I don't know if you have would call it an abortion. One of her followers was pregnant, and then the saint did something, so she became unpregnant. But she would have dealt with people from lower classes and dealt with women who were of a lower, whose status was complicated, quite quite often. Tried to correct a pagan channel who said, "Yeah, the saint did exist. There is, like, I'm 99% certain that that Saint Bridget as a person existed, and it's much more likely that the saint existed. Did the goddess exist? We don't know. There's 3 or 4 lines in the Irish, in different Irish annals, not annals, sources, about Saint Goddess, about someone who could have been a goddess. My feeling is, if this goddess was um, had existed, we would know a lot more about her. For example, the Morrigan, we have a lot of information, appears all over the place. Lou appears all over the place. Cuchulainn appears all over the place. But Saint Bridget, sorry, not Saint Bridget, Bridget, a goddess, there is basically reference. There's 2 or 3 lines in the Sanus Cormac, and then she's referred to in, not in the Tone, but in some of the Cuchulainn literature. So it's it's complicated. Thank you very much, Antoinette. Um, yeah, I'm very sympathetic to many pagan ideas, except I think pagans need to be a bit more aware of their history. It's the same with, like, Christian history. Don't get me started on that. Christian history is complicated. Like, if you start reading the works and the lives of saints, they are copying they're copying stuff in the Old Testament or New Testament as if this was history, and then people say this was history. It's not. There's a good fiction book with Saint Beaker set in 7th century Ireland or Britain called Credo. I don't know that one, but I'll have a look out for it. Do you know who wrote it? Any good books you recommend for Bronze Age Ireland? There are a lot. Um, la, da, 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 da. Um, I can't think of any off my head. My head is now kind of turning into jelly after talking for an hour, but I will put some into the notes when I put it on. When I put it on, you, like, this will go live, not live. This will appear on in my channels shortly, and in the notes to that, I'll try and put in some Bronze Age books. Robin Butcher, thank you, Robin. Thanks a million. Melvin Bragg. Okay, okay. Okay, I am going to finish now. I need to have a drink of warm water and honey. I think that's a very good idea, or another tea, or maybe a glass of wine. So I'll say Slán, and I'll have probably have a video. I'm going to make this into a video itself. But in about a month, I will do another live like this, and keep an eye out for other lives of mine. I'm trying, like, I spend most of my life driving my daughter around after school. Um, so sometimes I pass a place and I run in, and I'm waiting for a microphone so I can film outside of where it's windy. So hopefully they'll deliver it soon. Cranach Crow in Irish means tree of the woodcock. It's a lovely name. That's a lovely name. My name is John. Well, mine is Owen, so same name. Thank you. Antoinette, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I miss Book Depository. Kenny's in Ireland is quite good. And then there's a small bookshop in Carsavine I would use as well, essentially to support it. I like to support local books, but Book Depository is sadly missed, especially since they delivered without any postage. That makes a big difference. If you, like me, you order one book, well, you intend to order one book and you end up ordering like 5 or 6. And sometimes the books I order are hardback or big, so it turns into a big amount. Okay, so I will say good night again. Sloan, and hope to see you all soon. Okay, now how do I turn this off? Okay, thanks a million. Bye-bye. Nice to see you. I'm not the only one, Antoinette. Okay, now. Bye, Miho. Now, I've gone so blind I can't find how to turn it off. End stream. Okay.